Elkhart County, the heart of Hoosier ingenuity, from the fire hose nozzles to toy haulers. This region hasn't just built products, it's built livelihoods, community pride, and the backbone of American manufacturing. But today, families here are asking big questions. Who's listening? Who's leading? And what comes next? In a time where the cost of living outpaces paychecks and local voices too often feel drowned out in Indianapolis, we're turning our mic toward leadership that's rooted right here in towns like Elkhart and Bristol, with a candidate who says it's time to build not just things, but opportunity itself. Welcome back to Hold 'em Accountable. I'm Derek Holder, and today we are joined by Carl Stutsman, a Democratic candidate for Indiana's 48th State House District, representing communities like Elkhart and Bristol. Carl's campaign centers on economic opportunity, community thriving, and ensuring that the people who make this region hum also have a voice in the State House. Carl, thank you very much for being here.
Well, thank you, Derek, for having me on. I'm really excited to get a chance to sit down and talk. You're the first person to reach out to me since I announced my candidacy. And quite frankly, I think my loved ones are tired of just having to listen to everything I say. So whenever I can find some strangers, it's a good thing. So appreciate you having me on.
Well, let's start with District 48 is home to working communities with strong manufacturing roots. What are you hearing most often from families about wages, still living, and economic security? And how would you address these concerns at the State House?
Well, we're a heavily industrialized manufactured area. I mean, you've touched on that quite a bit. In fact, if you look at the industrial maps of the state of Indiana, there's a huge focus, specifically in my district and specifically in Elkhart County. There's a pretty incredible number out there, and I don't want to give the incorrect one, but it's something like the population of our county turns over times 2 every day for the number of people that are coming into work here. So when it comes to manufacturing and it comes to industry, it's almost like an exposed nerve, because when you make changes to the economy, we're usually the first ones that feel it, right? Beyond the state level and into the federal level, a lot of the concerns surrounding tariffs have really hit us very hard, even going back to Donald Trump's first term. And we had leadership that at times was willing to kind of stand up and say that this isn't what we need for our area. But in recent years, that's kind of waned. So what people are concerned with is the fact that despite the amount of money that flows through this county, and I mean, there's a lot of money that flows through this county, wages have largely remained stagnant. They haven't gone up at a pace that's any faster than the national average. And I don't have to tell you that the national average has not been great for your average American worker. Healthcare costs are through the roof. You know, we have more and more Hoosiers that are either limited by what they're receiving from their employers, or they're just relying quite heavily on what the state or what the federal government has to offer, that they're just not going to have it there. And at the end of the day, it's every little thing seems to add up to more and more dollars out of our individual pockets. Um, in Elkhart County, because we've had a region that has throughout its history gone from manufacturing this to manufacturing that to manufacturing whatever's next. At one point, we were the brass capital, the brass music instrument capital of the world. We still have quite a few brass instrument companies that are here in town. We've been known for a lot of things. And throughout that period, the relationship has been that when industry shows up, so does the workforce. That sort of enthusiasm isn't exactly what it used to be. When big industry shows up now, people aren't exactly excited, or they're not really jumping out of their seats to try and see what this next new thing is going to be, because it's all kind of the same playbook. Wages aren't going too far. Housing is a big problem because there's just not enough places to put people. The apartments that we are building are all luxury high-end apartments that come with, you know, some pretty significant price tags, and everyone is feeling the pinch. So solving affordability in the state house, that's a lot, and it's not just one individual thing, right? I think what people around here are most concerned with is probably the housing aspect of it. It's just it, that middle income range of houses that you're trying to get into, those starter homes, those $150,000, $200,000 homes, they don't exist anymore. And on top of that, you're taking out pretty big mortgages just to be able to get a house when you can find it. And you're probably overpaying and competing with a lot of people to get to it. So if you're not comfortable with your living situation, kind of makes everything else seem a little bit more difficult. And that's what I hear the most. People want to be able to afford to live in a house. They want to be able to afford to have reliable transportation that's going to get them to and from. They just want to be able to know that at the end of the day or at the end of the week, when they're looking at their bank account, they're not going to have to worry if they're going to make it to the next week. They're just going to be able to push through. And it comes down to wages, it comes down to affordability, it comes down to housing. And I know that's all speaking very generically, but it's a lot. It really is just so encompassing. It's one of those issues.
Elkhart County has long relied on manufacturing, as you've mentioned, especially RV and related industries. How should Indiana prepare workers for economic downturns, automation, and industry shifts without abandoning these communities?
That is a very hard question. Interestingly enough, Elkhart County is kind of already fighting that fight. We have an Amazon facility that was built on the north side of the county, just outside of the I-80 toll road. That is a largely automated facility for Amazon, a distribution facility. I don't know the exact number of workers are there, but when they sold it to the county, they said, look, this is going to be X number of workers, and the majority of the work that's in this building is going to be done with automation, right? And we've seen that everywhere. We're just going to get more and more of it. As far as the RV industry and manufacturing goes, luckily we're not at a point where automation has started to take a lot of jobs yet, right? We all kind of feel that that's sort of on the cusp, but because a lot of our products really are handmade, it's assembly line driven. I mean, imagine a car, but it's not like Ford or Chevy where they have all these robots going down the line. It's just big RVs on wheels getting pushed on tracks through warehouses, and step by step by step, they got one guy who's doing something, and it's like this woman's doing the electrical and this guy is going to be putting in all the furniture. And so the way that it is, automation is going to be really difficult to take over here, but preparing people for it, that's a much larger philosophical conversation. I don't necessarily know I have an answer for you today. You just have to dedicate yourself to the idea that the manufacturing base here gives people a way to live, right? You have to have those money. You have to have access to those paychecks. You have to be able to get insurance for your family. And change in any direction is not necessarily good or bad. It's just change. We just have to effectively protect the human element. And quite frankly, there's a lot of protected classes that are going to need extra attention or deserve extra attention in Indiana. And, absolutely, our workforce, our working class Hoosiers are probably at the top of that list.
How would you support public schools in Elkhart and Bristol, especially as districts face teacher shortages, aging facilities, and increasing pressure from the voucher expansion?
But we have to stop the voucher expansion. It's bottom line. This is one of my most passionate issues. I have a 9-year-old kid. I have a little girl who's in 4th grade. I'm going to be part of the school system for a long time. Concord schools are in my district along with Elkhart. And I'm a 4th generation Concord school graduate, meaning that my grandmother was around when it was a small local high school with like 30 graduating people. You have to stop the voucher program. As far as I see, there's no gray area in this. It's blatantly unconstitutional to take public dollars and distribute them to private education resources. And that's where the buck stops with me. It has to stop. It absolutely has to stop. Because when we get public school districts that, like you said, they're closing buildings. I mean, Elkhart schools, for example, are in the process now of consolidating multiple schools inside their district after already taking their 2 high schools and combining them into one less than a decade ago. So the amount of change is directly tied to the amount of funding and the amount of attention that we're getting from the state. Property taxes and a lot of that stuff, different conversation, different question, I'm sure. But the way to help them is to stop school vouchers, get money back into the schools, and start engaging in conversations with the teachers unions again. We need to start really. There are certain jobs in the community that are no-brainers. You want doctors to make plenty of money. You want nurses to make plenty of money. You want police officers and firefighters to make plenty of money. And as far as public safety goes, those are built in. But who are the people that are watching our kids for 6 hours a day? And the amount of responsibility that those teachers take on, the amount of personal feelings, the emotion that they put into their job and into these kids is incredible. That should be the most rewarded profession in our community, bottom line. I have I have an idea that I've been kind of playing with, and early on in the campaign, still working on messaging and kind of getting everything written down. There are certain pillars inside of every community that you have to be able to stand on, and they have to be strong. Public education is absolutely one of those pillars. I look at the other ones as being infrastructure, workforce, industry, and public safety. If you're not putting money into all of those things, then part of your community is going to fall apart. So it's refund. And that's the quick answer. That's the short answer. Will there be more difficult ones to come after that? Absolutely. Absolutely.
What gaps do you see in healthcare access in the 48th district, particularly in rural residents, seniors, working families? What role should the state play in closing those gaps?
We're very fortunate up here in District 48 to have several really strong healthcare networks. Beacon Healthcare Network, which is an offshoot of Memorial in South Bend, and Elkhart Memorial in Elkhart, where my mom worked for 33 years. So as an overall community, we're kind of lucky. We're not that full on rural. And I know there are parts of the states where those rural health deserts are really a problem. Up here, we're doing pretty okay. Of course, it could always be better. It's like we've got a program, I should say, we have an organization that runs through here in Elkhart called Heart City Health. And it was one of those community funded public health organizations that really, received some state funding. And their idea was to get into the community, find where the need was, and be able to help connect people who have less resources. And they've done a really good job through that. I would say that from what our local healthcare community has done, say in the last 5 years, I've been very impressed with, because it's an uphill fight all the way around. And they've done a good job establishing themselves. As far as what the state's role should be, I mean, keep the Medicare funding up. Keep funding the programs that you're already funding. I know that this year there was a pretty substantial cut to Indiana's rural healthcare initiative. I forget what Braun named that, so I apologize. But I know that last year's number, which was pretty high and the highest of the 3 years that it had been running before, saw the absolute most return on investment. We're getting more out of for all the public dollars we put in healthcare, we're getting more back. Right. We're getting more in benefits back. So as far as I see it, the state just needs to listen to their local communities, understand what their individual needs are. And it's hard to say in a budget year or in a couple of years where we've had rough budgets, but let's reconsider where we're taking money from and where the money can best serve us.
Now, to flip that question on its head, could the system that Elkhart has right now be spread out throughout the state? Just the idea.
Oh, the idea?
Yeah.
I mean, yes, but I don't think that it's not already. Just because it looks different and has different names here in Elkhart County, I wouldn't say that it isn't out there already. I was a reporter for about 13 years on and off between WTRC here in South Bend and WIBC in Indianapolis. And I can tell you that working with a lot of local communities, there's always people who have their finger on the pulse and they understand what's happening on the community level and they know what's going on. I mean, community healthcare is really what it comes down to. And what does it mean, community healthcare? That means listening to the people who are, living 2 miles away from the folks that need healthcare or are inside the city or are built into the government or already part of some sort of healthcare organization. You just got to listen and you got to be willing to give them and you got to be willing to continue to fund programs that prove that they're useful.
Housing costs and property taxes are rising across Elkhart County. What policies would you support to keep people in their homes while ensuring local governments can still fund essential services? Like SB1 just took a hatchet to all this stuff.
Yeah.
How do we change that?
Starts back at the state level. We've got to get our legislators on the same page and understanding exactly how much money they're taking away from these individual communities. I'm not a finger point guy. I don't like to point fingers at the GOP and say, look at the terrible policies. But I don't like to be that guy who every time I'm talking about an issue, but look at over the last 20 years. How have they handled affordability and property taxes? Indiana has stood kind of on that libertarian line of, we could just get rid of property taxes anytime. We're just going to keep threatening to do it. We may or may not do it, but we're just going to keep threatening to do it. And then SEA 1 took a hatchet to it last year, just like you said. And every local community, regardless of how red or blue they voted, their public infrastructure is seeing cuts. Their local healthcare is seeing cuts. Their local governments are having to decide if they want to keep certain buildings open in certain parts of the state. I don't think that's a problem here in Elkhart, but the amount of money that's just gone. I will admit, I do not have an answer as to how you solve the grander problem of affordability and property taxes. This is where my background as a reporter really comes in. I'm not an answers guy. I don't run on saying I know everything and you just listen to me. I will listen to you, and in the process of listening, we'll figure it out. The answer to the property tax problem is probably something that we haven't considered before, or maybe we just haven't considered it from the right angle. Fundamentally, and this is where I might get myself in trouble with some of the Democrat parties, so let me toe this line really quick. The idea of property taxes, just on its face, the idea that you can own property and if you don't pay your taxes, it can be seized by the government, is incredibly concerning for a lot of people. It's concerning for me. As someone who owns a house, I pay my taxes. I've not hit a point where I couldn't pay my taxes, but I know a lot of people who are on those sort of budgets and they can't. Right. I am not necessarily pro property taxes. I am pro the services that property taxes fund. And if long term the discussion is what are we going to do about property taxes, or if we're going to replace them, there is no discussion without a one-for-one swap. Wherever that money's coming from, you have to find a new way to get that money back into the community because it will not function without it. I am open to those conversations. I am always willing to listen. I think about the foundational idea of property taxes, in the 1800s when they first started doing this stuff, and really think about who owned property back then and what taxes were like and how it was distributed between the wealthy and the lower income individuals. But because the houses, median houses keep going up, the tax responsibilities of low income, middle income Hoosiers keeps going up as well. And that's really where the problem is. The people who have those multi-million-dollar homes right along the river in Elkhart, they're not worried about their property taxes. It's the person whose house was worth $100,000 3 years ago, and now it's worth $250,000, and they have to cover that tax bill every year. So I don't know what the solution is. I would really like to listen and engage in a conversation and come up with an actual one because we all deserve it. Not just as a rep, but as someone who, owns property and lives in a community, we all deserve an actual solution.
People think of infrastructure, they think of roads, but residents also deal with water systems, broadband access, and public transit limitations. What infrastructure investments matter most for your district?
Rural broadband was a big one for us. And I feel like we've made some pretty good progress with that as a county. And I know that's a big statewide initiative. And again, something else that had its funding on the chopping block last year when they were deciding where they were going to come up with some more money from. We've got to update a lot of infrastructure around here in Elkhart County. I mean, it's an old county. We've been around for quite some time. It's an old state. We've got sewer lines that need to be replaced. We've got water lines that need to be replaced. We've got our cities constantly growing. I know it's been a few years since they have, but occasionally they'll, go out there and they'll bring extra area into the city. They'll go out and just decide that this chunk needs to be a part of it. Why am I blanking on the words? I told you I would forget words too. Annex. Thank you. That's my friend in the background, annex. So they'll annex property, they'll bring things in. And when that happens, that's usually a natural time for them to update all of these things. It's just consistent. It has to be consistent. There should never be a moment where we sit back and look and be like, yep, it's all fine. Power grid's doing great. Water system is fantastic. The sewers are great. Everyone's good. It's just constant work. A lot of that's funded by the local community and through the cities and through the counties and townships. But when the state can offer that little bit of extra money, or they can say, we're going to offer this much if you're going to update your systems to this. And I know they've done that a lot over the years with sewer systems and things like that. Indianapolis and its exploding sewers back in the late 2000s was an especially fun time. But so long as there's continued investment, I think we're doing okay. I will say that as the person who's running, if you were to go out and ask someone in Elkhart right now, they'd tell you that too many of the roads are closed down. We have a bypass that has been finished for 3 months and NDOT has it closed until now July. And so there's a lot of other red tape issues that are constantly happening. But as far as investment and what the community is pushing for, I feel like Elkhart's headed in a pretty good direction.
You were talking about the exploding sewers in the 2000s in Indy. That was a fun time to work downtown. It
I
was
was
very
so
fun.
I was reporting for WIBC at the time, and I was the co-host for a show called 10 at 10, where we just top 10 news stories of the day at 10
Mhm.
o'clock. And I wrote my all-time favorite headline, which was Indianapolis officials concerned about exploding manholes. I was like, I don't know why. That just makes me laugh, but it made me laugh. And you got to do the little things as a journalist, right?
Oh yeah. I love it when they had to weld the manhole
Yes.
covers for the Super
Yes.
Bowl
Yes. Yes.
just to make sure that they didn't explode. And then we had the warmest February on record because I was working in the Chase Tower or Salesforce Tower, whatever the
Yeah.
heck it's
Salesforce
called
now.
now.
Yeah.
Um,
I built
I
one
was
of those
working
floors, by
there.
the way.
Pardon me.
I built one of those floors when I was a carpenter, by the way.
Nice. When I was working on the 44th floor, we, go out to lunch and they were doing the little Super Bowl stuff, village stuff, and they were doing the ice carving, and that ice was
Oh, yeah.
melting all over the place. It was like, God,
But how gorgeous was downtown?
yeah,
How gorgeous was downtown?
Indianapolis hosts some great events.
Look, Indiana's a great state.
Huh.
Trust me, I have friends who aren't from Indiana. They make fun of me too. Like it's okay. We all have this in common. It's a great state. It's full of great stuff to see. Um, Century Center in downtown South Bend, a great example, right on the river with the waterfall and the dam and everything that's right on the St. Joe. Gorgeous. Downtown Elkhart, we just we just built ourselves a big new city green in the middle of the city where we're holding these massive events. We had a summer fest with Kool and the Gang, where like a third of the population of the city showed up. There's some incredible stuff that's happening up here. You can't sit down in Indiana, not even for a second.
Indiana has passed some of the most restrictive reproductive laws in the country. How do you balance personal liberty, healthcare decisions, and the role of government when representing this district?
There's no balance. I believe 100% in medical self-autonomy, and that's as far as it goes. What's happening in your life medically, and this does fall into the category of abortions, it's between you and your doctor. It's your personal decision. Believe in a woman's right to choose. I believe in an individual's right to choose. And I don't know if this comes up as well, but as Indiana is pushing against the trans bathroom thing, or lots of red states around the country are trying to halt transgender any sort of transgender affirmative care. All of it falls into the same category as me. It's medical self-governance. And honestly, it amazes me that we don't have something, or we never built in something. For a country that stands on the idea of personal liberty constantly, it seems like a pretty easy choice.
Well, it's self liberty for me, not for thee.
Very true. Very true. That is poignant.
How do you approach gun safety policy in a district with strong Second Amendment traditions while still addressing concerns about domestic violence, suicide, and community safety?
This is a hard one. I have lost a couple of friends to gun violence, including my best friend who died in an accidental shooting when we were, in our early 20s, and a cousin who took his own life when I was, fresh in college. Guns are the easiest way to get someone to not like you in Elkhart County is to tell them exactly how you feel. Um, And I belong to a group called Dem Guns. I'm not as involved in it as I would like to be. I'm happy that it exists because gun owners exist on both sides of the spectrum, right? And there's no reason why we shouldn't be serving both sides of it. For a little bit more context, one of my part-time jobs many years ago was working for a company up here called Midwest Gun Exchange, and I sold firearms. I was a retail sales guy who I called in NICS forms back when you had to call those in, not when you could just type it in a form and send it via an iPad. Guns are another one of those things that so much of it comes down to personal responsibility. And we're just talking about the safety side of it, that I often wonder to what point we can legislate these things to actually solve the problems, if that makes any sense.
Uh-huh.
Um, you can put as many laws on the books as you want to. You can tell people they have to unload their guns before they clean them, that they have to put them up inside of it's up to the individual. We have no way to enforce it. We never will have a way to enforce it. For me, the larger gun debate not that laws can't be helpful and it shouldn't be part of a discussion, because it absolutely should. The real ground to be made there is on the individual level and probably not at the state level. I believe strongly in the Second Amendment. I have my carry license. I have my carry permit. I don't always carry. Sometimes I do. I go out and go shooting with my friends 3 or 4 times a year. I get it. I understand it. I come from a family that was a military family. I've been around guns since I was 4 years old. I remember being 6 and my dad pulled out his Beretta M92 and he unloaded it, put it on the table in front of me, and looked at me and he said, "Now, Carl, what do you do if you ever see a gun?" And I'm 6. And I'm like, I don't know, pick it up, play with it. He's like, "No, you go find an adult,"
Mhm.
you know? And then, from 6 years, then I was like 9 or 10. He's like, "Well, if you ever see my gun, this is how you clear a magazine." You have to take personal responsibility for these things. On the issue of domestic terrorism, firearms are that Pandora's box that we can never close. And I don't want to be the person who shrugs my shoulders and says that there is no solution, because I believe that there is. It's just going to take a long time to find it. And what the problem is a lot deeper rooted than what's on the books as far as our gun laws are concerned. So I'll tell you, in Indiana, your Second Amendment rights are fine. No one's gonna come for you. No one's gonna knock on your door or tell you that they're coming for your weapons. Um, but as a society, some of these things we have to take on ourselves for responsibility. And I should say that we're very fortunate in this part of the state. None of our school districts have had anything like that. But I know that's not the case for all of Indiana. And that's not a perspective I have. And I imagine from the individuals that have really experienced gun violence on that level, the perspective is different and also correct. So, not to give a non-answer, but it's it's a lot, and you don't have to worry about your Second Amendment rights being under attack from me ever.
Many voters feel the State House listens more to donors and lobbyists than regular Hoosiers. What does accountability look like to you, and how would you practice it as a legislator?
I don't know what not being accountable looks like, to be honest with you. Maybe that's the advantage of coming at this from fresh eyes. Um, I'm a journalist, or I was a journalist. So what I was doing work was directly in response to what our listeners wanted, or what our readers wanted, or what the people around us wanted. Our content was driven by that. We were 100% accountable to the people that were listening to us every day. And trust me, if we screwed up, they had no problem letting us know. I don't really know how not to be accountable. That's the whole point, I thought, was to listen to the people that put you in office, and not special interests in the people that are giving you money. I'm already running a grassroots campaign. My finance manager calls it a poverty campaign, but I like grassroots because it seems a little bit more hopeful. Um, it's it's exactly what it sounds like. You have to have your finger on your own community. You've got to know the pulse of your own community. You need to know where the need is, what people are looking for, and actually reach out and pay attention. Um, the unfortunate reality is that for a lot of Republican representatives in this state, that R in front of their name is about as deep into their character as you're going to get. Because it's whatever the agenda is. It's whatever the Republican majority wants to push, especially in the state house. Kudos to the Senate. They've been doing some work lately. I want to make sure that we're clear about that. But in the House, it's really easy to just vote right along that party side and move on. It's not about listening. It's not about talking to anyone. It's just doing what you're told. That's not government. It's just not government. So I'll have to ponder on what it would be like to not be responsible to the people that elected you. I don't know that I could go to work every day and, tell my boss that I don't care about what he feels, because that's effectively what it is. It's like,
Yeah.
how do you tell the people in your own community that are watching their schools close down that, whoa, do we really need this extra $1 billion for private schools this next year? So, yeah, not to be too simple about it, but listen, be responsive, talk to people. I understand that being a legislature is a part-time job. No, it's a full-time job. And if you don't treat it like a full-time job, the only people that are going to suffer are the ones that put you there.
Why are you the right person to represent Indiana's 48th district at this moment? And what would you say to voters who may be skeptical that the state government can actually improve their lives.
Well, they have 20 years worth of proof to confirm that bias to themselves that they aren't going to improve their lives. That's maybe not fair. Little things have gotten better and improved over the years, but you know what I'm talking about, the grand picture of everything. Um, I'm the right candidate because I have unintentionally or intentionally very much tried to be a reflection of my own community. Um, I going back to high school, I was a state champion in high school. No one brags about being a speech and debate state champion, but I was a speech and debate state champion in high school. Okay, just want to get that bragging point out of the way. But I went out and I became a reporter. And when I became a reporter, I came home. I came back to my hometown radio station because that's where I wanted to be. And I loved everything about it. I got to learn parts of my community that I didn't know exist. I got to meet people that I was connected to that I otherwise never would have met. Found beauty in in this area of the community that are hard to find, not because they're not there, but if you don't know where to look, you don't know where to look. And what I discovered through the process of being, I like to use community journalist because I really don't like to call myself a true journalist. As a community journalist, what I discovered is that this is a beautiful place in the world. We really are a microcosm of what makes this country run. It's manufacturing. We have an incredibly diverse population out here. I mean, how many other parts of the country can you say that you have an entire section of society that lives apart from regular society, but still takes part in society? And by that, I mean the Amish. if you were concerned, or if you were wondering. And it's like, I have tried my best to be as versatile and well-rounded about the community as I can. And then when my radio career ended, or in the times that I've not been in radio, I've been a carpenter. I've been an animal control officer. I've been a delivery driver. I have a forklift certification, which I'm pretty sure qualifies me to be a state representative. And I'm going to brag that I may be the only state candidate that has an OSHA 30 certification. I gotta call the union and see if I can get my confirmation. But I see what the community is. I see the manufacturing. I grew up in a trailer park directly adjacent to a manufacturing complex. So all of it has been in my life, and in my face since the time I was a kid. And it's not about Democrat or Republican. It's not about conservative or liberal. Most of the issues that we all deal with on a day-to-day basis are just human problems that don't really have much of a political difference. And that's what I want. That's what I want to be able to do, is find those problems and actually do something about them. Not because it's part of the party's agenda, but because it's the right thing to do and it's what you're supposed to do. So I'd say I'm the right person for 48 because I have been in way too much of this district. I've worked inside the factories. I've worked on lines, being the only English speaking person in the entire department. I have delivered to just about every factory. One of my favorite things is when I go out to places and people will say, "Oh yeah, I work for Lippert." It's like, "Well, which Lippert plant?" Lippert 45. "Oh, you mean over on Goshen?" It's like by the train tracks. Do you guys still have a problem with the kitchen flooding whenever the snow melts that's the sort of stuff that I like to engage with people on, because when you meet them on that level, it breaks apart the stuff that outwardly makes us different. We can get into the real stuff. And also to the conservative community who may accidentally stumble upon this interview, despite the fact that I'm running as a Democrat, I worked in conservative news talk radio for 13 years. I was a reporter and I was a news person, and I maintained that integrity as a news person, right down the middle, trying to give you the best journalism I can. But that job, that position made me listen. I had to listen. I wanted to listen. And because of that, I understand the conservative point of view in this community equally as well as I do the Democrat point of view. And I want to bring them two together and make positive change.
All right, Carl, we've talked about policy, we've talked about priorities, and what life looks like in Elkhart and Bristol. Now it's time to pick up the pace. This is the part of the show we call Hold 'em or Fold 'em. I'm going to read a series of statements tied directly to Indiana's 48th district. For each one, you'll tell us whether you hold it, meaning you support it, or fold it, meaning you don't. Short answers are fine, but if something needs a quick clarification, take it. No speeches, no hedging, just call the hand. Ready? Let's deal. Indiana should prioritize public school funding over expanding private school voucher programs.
Did you say private school funding or public school funding?
Public.
Okay, public. Yes, absolutely. Hold them. 100%.
The state should play a more active role in stabilizing manufacturer jobs during RV industry turndowns.
I don't mean to land in the middle on that one, but I would have to think about it for a while. And I would say that anything in the way of worker protections or trying to protect people, knowing generally that's where the conversation's headed, yeah, I'll hold them. I want to have those talks. I want to make sure we can keep people working and doing stuff.
Healthcare decisions should be made between patients and doctors, not legislators in Indianapolis.
Hold them.
Property tax,
In fact, I'll double down on
that is your double down.
it.
Property tax relief should focus first on homeowners and renters, not large corporate property holders.
Hold them. Yeah.
Indiana should invest more state dollars into local infrastructure like water systems, broadband, and sidewalks, not just highways.
Yes. Yes. I I was gonna say it's like on the larger view on that. I don't know what it looks like, but yeah, statewide investment always good.
Teachers in Elkhart deserve higher pay and stronger classroom support.
Teachers in Elkhart deserve medals, so yeah, they absolutely deserve higher pay. I'm gonna hold them on that.
The state has a responsibility to address housing affordability, not leave it entirely to the market.
Yes, yeah, that's a really long answer, so I'm just gonna leave it with hold them.
Gun safety measures and Second Amendment rights can coexist without canceling each other out.
Hold them.
Lawmakers should be prohibited from voting on bills where they or their donors have a direct financial interest.
I'm gonna also add their spouses to that as well, if I could, and say yes, hold them.
If elected, I will prioritize district needs over party pressure when those two are in conflict.
Hold them. Just watch what happens the first time someone tells me I have to make a decision.
Before we wrap up, I want to take a moment to say thank you to Carl for joining us today and for stepping up into the arena to represent Indiana's 48 State House District. Whether you agree with Carl on every issue or not, what matters is this: democracy only works when people are willing to show up, answer questions, and put their ideas on the table for the communities they want to serve. Places like Elkhart and Bristol, where the work is real and the stakes are personal. These conversations aren't about sound bites or party labels. They're about schools, jobs, healthcare, housing, and whether everyday Hoosiers feel seen and heard by the people making decisions in Indianapolis. That's why we do this. To the voters of District 48, your voice matters. Your questions matter, and your expectations of accountability matter no matter who wins. Carl, thank you again for taking the time, for engaging honestly, and being willing to answer both the easy and the uncomfortable questions.
Well, thank you for inviting me. And seriously, I've been on your side of this way more than I've been on this side. I know it's a lot of work. I know it's a lot of research and balancing things. So thank you for giving people like me this, opportunity to come out here and just have this platform. So I'm very happy to have been on. Thanks, Derek.
Thank you. And to everyone watching or listening, this is your reminder that democracy isn't something you check in on every 4 years. It's something you participate in, question, and protect. So stay informed, ask questions, and as always, hold them accountable.